Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Well, you're looking good. Did you enjoy this morning's sessions? All right, very good. We're getting into technology, inclusion, and social change. And we ended right before the luncheon with a panel session on fintech and the possibilities of fintech. We have a very, very special guest from the U.S. House of Representatives. His name is Congressman Gregory Meeks. He serves the people of the New York's 5th Congressional District, and he has been in Congress for 17 years. During that time, he has earned the respect of his constituents, and I gotta tell you, even though he's here today to talk about fintech, I know him as the Africa guy. I know him as a champion for entrepreneurs. I know him as a champion for low-income families and all of the challenges that are faced by families on the margins of the U.S. economy. He is, I would say, a policy renaissance man, meaning that he covers many areas, but central to the focus of what he does is opportunity. Opportunity that's focused on leveraging business access and building wealth. And so today, we are very pleased to welcome Congressman Gregory Meeks, who has some important words to bring us. He serves on the Financial Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, and he has some very important words and insight to bring when it comes to fintech. Welcome, Congressman Meeks.
Good afternoon. It is great to be here this afternoon, and I want to thank Maya for inviting me here and the staff at the Center for Global Policy and Solutions. You're here at a exciting time as well as a worrisome time, and I know I was supposed to be here a little earlier, but there's so many things that's going on the Hill. So it is, and in this new presidency that we have, I call it number 45, you've got to pay attention because things change not just on a daily basis. It could be 5 or 6 times during the day. And so we are working hard on the Hill. But what's important with the Center for Global Policy Solutions that you have remained strong partners as we work to ensure all individuals are provided the tools to building wealth. Building wealth is something that we've got to make sure is always on the tip of our tongue, because I say oftentimes the second phase of the civil rights movement is wealth building. Without wealth, we cannot be free. Freedom needs money, and we've got to build that wealth. So the Center's annual Wealth Summit is critical to what I believe is our overall goals. We often tell people that the first step to recovery is to admit that you have a problem. Well, this summit is important because the first step toward closing our wealth gap, and that's what people are always talking about right now, we've got the greatest wealth gap in the history of this country, is for policymakers and industry leaders to admit that we have a serious problem here in the United States of America. And this annual event allows us to think through how we can make the American dream accessible to all. Also, I know that you've had panels who were discussing this issue before me. So the financial innovation dealing with fintech and technology and others can provide opportunities to close America's wealth gap, but there's also serious risks that we must remain vigilant of and make sure there are meaningful gains in. So let me quickly begin by discussing the potential that's in financial innovation. This marks 40 years. It was 40 years ago since Congress took a bold step in demanding that the FDIC-insured banks provide fair and equal access to their services. 40 years ago, Congress passed the Community Reinvestment Act, known as CRA. And 40 years later, CRA is facing what I call a midlife crisis. The law is in a transition period where some individuals question its still being relevant and its effectiveness. Despite CRA, there remain troubling aspects and troubling access problems in our communities. One, and I use as an example my district in Jamaica, Queens, New York, where you see that banks are not truly meeting all of the needs of the customers. In my district in Jamaica, 34% of individuals with a bank account rely on alternative financial service providers. These alternatives include check cashing services, money orders, payday loans, pawn shops, rent-to-own agreements, tax refund application loans, anticipation loans. So that's 34% of individuals with a bank account still use these alternative services. So the question then becomes, why do these voids persist? For many firms, the old ways of banking are simply not as profitable anymore. Last year, I took the comptroller of currency on a tour through my district, and we discussed this problem. And I expressed concerns that since the financial crises, over 5,000 banks, 5,000 bank branches have closed throughout America, leaving some communities with little to no access to safe financial services. Fintech, and I know y'all been talking about fintech, innovation can help make traditional banking services more profitable and accessible for communities. So I've been encouraged by some of the innovative partnerships between banks and fintech companies that have helped banks cut their costs, enhance their underwriting processes, serve wider markets, and provide new services and products. These efficiencies can improve access, and the cost savings can be transferred to customers. Now, I'm enthusiastic about that, but nevertheless, I remain very cautiously optimistic about the new technologies, especially as I consider some of the potential risks, because there are still a number of risks. The misuse of algorithms and big data worries me. Innovative formulas that firms use to predict consumer behavior are only as good as the information that humans plug into them. As well, we all know humans can harbor inner biases. For example, ProPublica has been doing some good work on this issue, and I bring your attention to this, that they recently reported that in 4 states, large insurers charged individuals living in minority neighborhoods, on average, 30% more in car insurance premiums than other communities. These disparities occurred even after the study controlled for accident, risk, and age. They find that these disparities existed in upper middle class African American neighborhoods as well as low income neighborhoods. These findings caused me to believe that firms are using information in their risk models that produce discriminatory results. For example, now one of my favorite artists is Smokey Robinson. I grew up listening to Smokey. I love listening to Smokey. And a lot of my friends who I grew up with, they also listen to Smokey Robinson. But what should firms do, because they're looking now at everything and whatever your tendencies are, what do firms do with information if it shows that individuals who listen to Smokey Robinson are more likely to get into a car accident or less likely to pay a bill on time? Though this information is racially neutral, it certainly can have a discriminatory effect on folks like me who happen to listen to Smokey Robinson. So we've got to pay attention to all this information that goes out. Making matters a little worse, much of the innovative information used by firms to determine the creditworthiness or risk are non-public. They become proprietary information. Firms have an interest in protecting their modeling from their competitors. So if this information was made public, it probably wouldn't be innovative for too long because people would try to steal the information. But nevertheless, the lack of transparency among firms have left members of Congress and other lawmakers and regulators without the information so that we can combat potential discriminatory practices masked as innovation. So what can we do? What can Congress do? A lot of what we have to do is to play defense throughout the Congress under this new administration. All you have to do is look at what he just put out yesterday for his tax piece. Look at what he's talking about with health care. Look at what he's talking about with reference to foreign policy. Everything that we're doing right now is we are in the defensive mode trying to stop him from hurting and harming more individuals. And so, as Maya indicated, I'm a member of the Financial Services Committee, and I am proud to be one that was a negotiator of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street reform. And when we drafted Dodd-Frank, we were very forward-thinking and forward-looking and provided the federal government with new tools to track emerging consumer harms in the markets, and we have to defend those reforms vigorously. We also came up with the CFPB because nobody was on the side of the consumer to make sure that we had clear information. So, for example, last week, I submitted a letter to Secretary Mnuchin demanding that he appoint a director to the Federal Insurance Office. FIO was created by Dodd-Frank. The reason why we put it in there was to monitor access to affordable services in underserved communities. And FIO's work can bring us a step closer to understanding the types of big data insurance companies incorporate in their risk models and whether their practices unfairly produce discriminatory results. Now, this week and next week, we are in what we call a markup session in the Financial Services Committee. The chair of the committee has brought what he calls the Choice Act. Maxine Waters and I call it the Wrong Choice Act. Because what they are proposing is to eliminate FIO, eliminate CFPB, eliminate many of the provisions that were put in place to protect individuals and to give individuals greater access to capital, and thereby do away with the authority to track, in this instance, insurance affordability for underserved communities. And in the meantime, we also fear that that guy number 45 will simply not appoint a director to the FIO to render the office ineffective. So what he wants to do is to make sure that the office can't do what it's supposed to do. So we're working. Now, I got to tell you, so one of the things that we've got, and some of you all know, Maxine Waters is no joke. And so we're on the committee, and just about every Democrat on the committee is there, and we are fighting on a continuous basis. Now, we believe that the Wrong Choice Act has no place to go, because even if they pass it out of the House, it's not going to go any place in the Senate. And so we've got to be diligent, and we've got to make sure that we continue to move forward there, and we've got to make sure that we don't lose our eyes on the prize and not allow them to water down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So let me just end on this, because I think it's extremely important. We're living in uncertain times. We see marches that's going on. We see people that are talking. The question is, what are we going to do? The question is, are we going to lose all of the gains that we fought for and won? Or are we going to stand and we're going to fight? And when we do that, we see that we win. And so working right now to make sure that as we move toward 2018, we are holding everybody accountable. We're making folks dot I's and cross T's. We've got to make sure, though, in that vein, and that's why I said the second phase of the civil rights movement is economics, because when we start building our own economic base and making sure that access to capital, and we've got to know with fintech, there's opportunities there, we've got to jump in there. We've got to make sure that fintech companies have a new kind of CRA also, so that it is accessible to all of us, and we can make sure that we get advantages or have the advantages and have it accountable to us. And in doing that, in 2018, we can get people in place so that there is a check on the president. That's what it's all about. It's also about local areas. Somebody in this room may be running for governor. Somebody may be running for the Senate, running for the state legislature. I bring this up because we've lost over 1,000 legislative seats in the last 8 years. We lost over 18 governorships and a majority in the House and the Senate. And so I could not leave this room without saying that politics is involved. And we've got to make sure for the gains that we've had, because we fought to make sure that people would be in positions to represent us to make a difference, we can't think in 2018 that that is any different now. I just left a meeting. I'm chair of the Congressional Black Caucus's Political Action Committee. Just left the meeting just now. And our focus, Brother Jealous, was to make sure that we've got folks running for governor, and to make sure that we get behind those individuals who we know have our interests at hand and can make a difference. Because if we can win governorships, because all when they talk about ending the health care and giving states rights and moving forward, if we got the governors in place, we can control a lot of other things. And so we've got to make sure that we got to urge you to get out there and run, and others like you. And when we do that, we are empowering ourselves, and we can have access and make sure the financial institutions open up doors for our folks so that we can make sure that we have access to capital and other things to create the wealth in our own communities, to make sure that they have a better tomorrow than today or yesterday. So I salute the work that you've done with the NAACP and the work you've done in the past, and I hope the work that you will be doing in the very near future. And I just want to take my hat off to Maya, because she has never stopped. She has never stopped. Keeping a focus on making a difference here in the United States, and the reason why she knows me from Africa and other places, because that's where she's been. She's been all over this planet trying to lift people up and making a difference for them. And Maya, I thank you and your other half, because Lord knows he's been doing some work. He has been doing some work and has been given much. But we know that to whom much is given, much is required. So my brothers and my sisters, let me just say to you, I leave you with the charge. Let's us never forget who we are. Let's never forget where we came from. And let us never forget who's helped us move forward. Because when we do that, we can make sure that tomorrow is better for our young folks than today or yesterday is and was for us. Thank you. God bless you.